Hey
Hello,
there,
Nate,
Greg.
and look at that in your new digs.
I know. Welcome. Sorry we missed you last week. I was moving to a new house, and I was in the middle of tearing my office down, moving my office along with all the other less important parts of a household, and returning my new office, to a functional place. And you're looking at it now. We're here. We're here. We're live, and we're gonna talk birds. And we're gonna get back on a schedule, Greg. We're gonna do it. We're
Ha!
holding ourselves to it. We're gonna do it. We're
Ha!
gonna do it every 2 weeks, like we're trying to.
Right on. So, I'm going to
Gotta
imagine
have
that
high
you.
hopes. Gotta swing big.
I'm going to imagine you haven't been out birding too much since you've been moving
Oh
your
my
house.
goodness. If you're gonna move at any time and you're a birder, I would suggest midsummer is a good time to do it because there's not a lot to see out here anyway. And yeah.
Yeah, we
Anyway,
moved it.
we
We
are.
moved in October when we moved into our
Oh, that's a
house.
brutal time to move because you're
Yeah.
being pulled in a million different directions. Some of them are not involved with unboxing things. Folks, I'm Nate Swick. That's Greg Neise. We're with the ABA, and we're going to do a What's This Bird Live. What is What's This Bird Live? You might be asking yourself if you've never visited with us before. I don't know why you would be asking that because we've been doing this for like 3 years now. But the ABA maintains a bunch of Facebook groups, one of which is called What's This Bird? It's a friendly community for people to post photos of birds that they would like identified by our chat, like our by our admins, by our great community of bird watchers of many different skill levels. And every once in a
Numbering in
while,
the
we get some
tens of
photos.
thousands.
Tens of thousands. Eat that,
Yes.
Fish and Wildlife Service, with your numbers, with your inflated numbers. Our
47
numbers are for
billion.
real. Yeah. So we're back, and we you can post your photos up on What's This Bird, and people are going to help you identify them. Every once in a while, we get some photos that require a little bit more discussion. We're going to talk about identification points of those birds and just birding in general with all y'all out there. Welcome.
Yeah.
We're back, Greg. How's things up in Chicago? Still hot? Still humid? Are you
No,
getting? Yeah.
it's actually been very pleasant. But one other thing to mention is that we are also watching. We're doing this live,
Just
and
live.
we are watching the comment sections both in Facebook and YouTube, and you
Mm-hmm.
guys get to play with us. Not like that. Play along with us, and if you've got something to say, you got a question, a comment, drop it in the comments section there, and we will do our best to get to you. Just want to say right off the bat that Len, Julie, and Daphne and Rose all say hi. So hi
Hi.
back to you guys. Yeah, I mean
We got
it's been
people
a
on YouTube too.
oh,
I'm gonna toss them out too. Hey,
throw them
Coffee.
out
Hey,
there.
Buddy Campbell from Beaufort, South Carolina. Sorry, I'm a North Carolinian. It's pronounced Beaufort up here. It's Beaufort down there. Jimbo from Winnipeg. Hey, Jimbo, you missed the last couple. So did I. So just as well. And
Yeah.
Solamente V's. Hello again. We are yes. It's just like the Seinfeld where Jerry's kitchen is remodeled, except this is actually my real new office. It was supposed to be a closet, but we were able to turn it into an office. I haven't sound treated it yet, so I apologize if I'm a little echoey, but we're doing
It
the
sounds
best we can
fine.
here. Yeah, I hope so. So
Yeah, so I mean it hasn't been a particularly busy summer bird wise so far, and
hmm
pretty much the
no
normal stuff. But I
limpkins,
did,
no
huh?
limpkins, no
No
limpkins.
limpkins.
Limpkins disappeared
No
off the face of the earth.
limpkins. I think I
Like
messed
that.
that up.
He's
But
gone.
I think I messed that up because last year it was such a limpkin rich environment that I
Mm.
did not at all think, and I have a theory, but I didn't
Okay.
think that getting a limpkin in Illinois would be difficult, so I didn't try for one, and I didn't get one last year. And now
Okay.
there's none. They're
I still
gone.
don't have one. I still don't
There
have
were
one in
like
North Carolina.
25 in the state last summer, and there's none now. And I have a suspicion that the unusual nature of the cold snap that we got in late January, early
The polar
February
vortex.
did them in.
Yeah.
Because I have bamboo growing in my backyard that has been growing wonderfully for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that 2 week cold snap took them out because there was no snow involved. There was no insulating blanket. There was no humidity. I mean, it was
Huh.
just cold and dry and nasty. And I think that anyways,
The bamboo index, the bamboo limpkin.
the bamboo index. And but speaking of backyard, I did have one kind of interesting thing happen. Observation, sitting in the yard the other afternoon, late afternoon. We've got broad-winged hawks in the neighborhood, and a big locust tree next to us that's full of annual cicadas. The ones that I think they're scissor grinders. They're incredibly loud. Broad-winged hawk comes zooming in and grabbed a cicada. What's that?
Is that a colloquial name? Scissor grinder?
No, I think that's actually a species name.
Is it really?
I believe so. And it may be a colloquial name. I'm not sure.
Out all the stops,
but it's the one that's Anyway, hawk shoots in, grabs a cicada. All the cicadas in the neighborhood shut up immediately. And the hawk is sitting up there eating the cicada for 10 minutes. It's absolutely silent. When the bird flies off, a minute later, all back wound up again.
Maybe you got the band leader.
It was eerie. Yeah, definitely got the band leader.
I have a question on we already got questions. We already got comments from the chat. Hey, chat. From Patty Elton on YouTube, who asks, she lives in the Blue Ridge foothills in Southwest Virginia. Beautiful part of the country, not too far from where I live. Is it too early to see male scarlet tanagers in their fall yellow-green plumage? No signs of blotchy green and red. It is not. I would say that those are probably young birds. Coming out this year. Those are the first of the young birds that have come out and are fledging and look more or less similar to the females. It takes a little while for them to get that deep red plumage, and you'll probably those birds will be turning over the course of next year. But I think those are probably young birds, not adults. So I mean, they've already had one or two fletches out already this year.
It may not feel like it weather-wise or any other way, but we're only a few days away from fall as far as neotropic migrants are concerned.
Yeah. Yep. They're going to start moving. And there's a lot of birds in pretty heavy molt these days. We'll talk about that. I think we've got some photos to
we do have some
to illustrate that point.
We do. Bill Warfel from Fayetteville says hello.
Hello. Which Fayetteville?
I have no idea.
North Carolina, Fayetteville, Arkansas.
I don't know.
A lot of Fayettevilles. Sarah Coffey says, has a red-headed woodpecker come to the middle of her feeder this week in the middle of town? Pretty crazy. Yeah, well, I mean, this is weird bird season. This is the time of year when birds are sort of doing their post-breeding dispersal, and it means that they kind of turn up in really odd places. So they're not going to be, focusing so much on breeding. They're focusing on finding food and, getting ready to maybe migrate a little bit. Red-headed woodpecker, not super highly migratory, but does migrate a bit. But they're probably moving around a little bit and checking out places that they haven't been in for a while. But yeah, sometimes you'll get stuff in the middle of town that surprises you. Red-headed woodpecker, I always associate them with like old oak stands and in the Midwest and the Southeast, it's both a pretty common bird, and they're both found in slightly different places. And where I grew up in Missouri, they'd be in those woodlots that are kind of surrounded on all sides by pasture. And here in North Carolina, they like those retention ponds that have the dead trees in them, where they use them as larders for acorns and stuff.
But like you said, post-breeding dispersal, birds can show up anywhere, and they definitely do. And
it's not like migration; they're not traveling long distances, but they'll check the next patch over and be in weird places.
Well, and they also wander. Different birds wander in different directions. Wading birds wandering north after breeding is a well-known phenomenon. And I mean, who knows? There's still time for limpkins. We could have a strong end of the summer for limpkins. I don't have one of my
high hopes of that. I think it's going to take another couple years for them to breed up enough to spread out like they did before. Sorry, South Dakota.
One of my favorites
and didn't get one.
Post-breeding movements of birds is Kirtland's warblers, which I learned about a few years ago when they started tagging them and following them, and they discovered that a very large part of the population, almost the entire population, goes northeast into Ontario and spends a little bit of time there and then goes south to the Caribbean.
Go figure.
Yeah. But yes, the thing we do here is we talk about birds and bird identification. So let's do
Sure,
that, shall we?
that's what we do. Yeah, let's get to the
Um,
birds. I think we've vamped enough. But first.
but first,
I gotta
there's
start
always
remembering that we always have
there's
a little
always a
segment
but
before we get
first.
to the- yeah.
We are going to be having a ABA community weekend in Boston in mid-August. Anybody in the Boston area or who will be in the Boston area, you should check that out. Our executive director, Wayne Klockner, Wayne Peterson, and who else is going to be there? Tom Stevenson. Oh, and Mike Amico, our pal from OM System, some of the greatest cameras for birding, some of the best birding kit you can get, will all be there. And one of the cool things about having OM System there is that they bring gear for you to try, and not just stand there in front of the table and like point, but actually take out in the field and give it a shot and see how you like it. So it'll be a really good time. And
Boston,
so if you're in the
Mass,
Boston
great birding
area,
city. Love that dirty
Yeah.
water. Dirty water, great
Yeah.
for birds.
So this one comes from Vail, Colorado, and it's in the spring. It was in May, and that's kind of important here.
Support. This is why we always like it. We always assume when people post photos on What's This Bird that those photos were taken relatively recently. That's not always the case. We certainly understand that.
Sure.
But if it's not, make sure you put those date and certainly the location when you're putting those birds online, because it really does help us narrow down what birds we are possibly looking at.
Yeah. So I mean, looking at this
distribution S&D.
Yeah, looking at this. It's obviously a small bird. We can't see what's going on with the face, but just judging by those leaves and the branches, this looks like a little, warbler, finchish kind of looking bird, vireo, something like that.
Yeah, small, and also sort of the way that it is kind of probing the ends of those branches really gives me a vibe of a small, small bird, finch, warbler, siskin. I guess this one's a finch, but that sort of range, those birds tend to work the edges of branches like that. You do get a sense of the size and behavior of that bird. Like I'm imagining, I know this is a still photo. We always do still photos here, but I'm imagining this bird kind of flitting around the edges of these leaves, kind of probing for insects in those clusters.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, overall greenish with grayish on the head. It looks like kind of yellowish greenish. Yeah, nondescript underparts. What look like a couple of wing bars there, but they're not
pretty light ones.
Yeah, they're just kind of like some fresh feather fringing. And
kinglet,
one
that's
thing
good one that could possibly throw it in there.
One thing
the
you will
lack
learn.
of wing bars would rule out kinglet. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Greg.
Yes, no, lack of wing bars rules out kinglet, and really the green coloration rules out.
It's very bright.
Pretty much everything but warblers and kinglets in Vail, Colorado. And
it's got a hint of an eye line there. But
it's got something going on in the face. I can't really tell what it is, but yeah, there's definitely something going on around the eye. So yeah, we're looking at a warbler here, and the person who posted it wasn't sure if it was a Tennessee or an orange crowned. Now,
for sure, based on the location, when I was glancing through these photos before we got started, Greg, my first inclination was orange crown.
Yes.
And I didn't think too much about it, because when I see a bright greenish warbler in the North American West, I immediately think orange crowned warbler. That's probably the most common possibility there. But you pointed me to a couple things here that made me second guess it, and there's a reason why those two birds are frequently mistaken for each other, or frequently thrown together as an ID conundrum.
Yeah, and the both of those species can show gray on the back of the head. As a matter of fact, this time of year is when the gray really becomes important, because Tennessee warbler, especially a first-year bird, is just very green all over, and doesn't show the gray that orange crowns usually show in the fall. But the fringing on the feathers on the wing panel there, those are super fresh, and that'll wear off pretty quickly.
Sure.
But the things that we can see, besides what we've already talked about here, the undertail coverts look to be white-ish, whiter than the rest
Yes.
of the belly. Um, and the primaries. Look at the triangle cone of the primary sticking up
Yep.
there,
The wing extension.
and
Yeah.
how short the tail looks compared
Mm-hmm.
to that wing. So let's cut to the chase here and compare those two species.
For sure.
And so here's Tennessee and orange crowned together, and those white lines are the length of the primaries. So I drew the line over the top so we can see the difference in the length of the primaries. And our bird in question is a Tennessee warbler, based on those two things: the white undertail coverts and the length of the primaries. And the length of the primaries you can't really see very well in the field unless you're lucky and the bird sits still, which they never do.
Yeah.
But in
Those
photographs,
flitty ones.
you can do it.
Yeah, for sure. And for my money, I see a lot more Tennessees in the east than orange crowns. It's kind of flipped a little bit in the west, flipped quite a bit in the west, I should say.
Yeah.
Tennessee has always gives you say you can't really see the primary projection, and that's absolutely true. A lot of times, however, though, the bird will be like directly above you, and so you'll get like a view of the backlit view of the shape of the bird. A lot of times, you can see that short tail and the two very long kind of primaries sticking off, parallel on both sides of it, almost
Yes.
like little spears, little knives sticking out the back. That's something you almost never see with orange crown. It does have a very distinctive shape, almost like kind of sharp and very short tailed. So it's not necessarily you're looking at the primary extension and seeing that. You're kind of seeing it compared to the tail and getting a whole kind of sense of the bird, a whole gestalt of the bird.
Exactly.
For Tennessee warbler. Whereas orange crowned, as you can see in this photo really well, the wings look more blunted because they're shorter. That's just sort of the impression it gives me. And also the tail is much longer. So the wing to tail ratio is something that you sort of key in on, maybe subconsciously. And that's what stands out on these birds a lot of times. If you can't see a lot of the other field marks, if they're backlit, if they're high up, if they're in a bush, whatever, those are the things that kind of stand out.
Exactly, and I don't know that the tail is actually any longer in an orange crowned warbler.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But it
yeah.
appears to be because of the length of the wings, and that's something that we point out a lot, especially in flycatchers and like house finch versus purple finch. The primary and yes, the house finch versus purple, the house finch tail is a little bit longer, but the longer wings of the purple finch make the tail look really short compared to the other. So that's always, that kind of structure is always something to pay close attention to if you can.
Yeah, and I think that's the better field mark than the undertail coverts. Certainly, the undertail coverts definitely lean towards Tennessee, and sometimes these first-year Tennessees. This was not a first-year Tennessee.
This was in May.
Photo
Yeah,
was taken in May. They can be very, very dark underneath. Very, very. These are the birds that you're probably going to start seeing in the next couple months as they start moving southward again. They can show a lot of green underneath, and it makes that white undertail covert stand out all the more. But sometimes you get birds like this, even this orange crown that you've illustrated here, Greg. There's a lot of difference between the upper parts and the under parts. It almost makes the undertail covert look pretty pale, although not completely white as you'd expect to see in a Tennessee warbler. Sometimes it can be close though. Between the two things, the wings, the wing extension, and the undertail covert, you can pretty much nail these birds, even when they're looking awfully similar as they do, especially in fall.
Yeah, I mean, and in adult birds, plumage can be very variable, quite variable. But structure very rarely.
That's right.
Very rarely is it variable. Now, in young birds, that you have to be a little bit cautious with that because really young birds have shorter bills than you might expect. In particular, we see birds, especially water birds, that have smaller bills, and it throws people off.
Yeah, Lynn Kopka on Facebook asks a great question. For those of us who don't remember, what is a first-year bird? And I apologize. I try not to be super jargony on these programs. We try to, explain things in layman's terms. First year is one of those terms that's sort of counterintuitive because what it refers to is hatch year, essentially the year that the bird hatches. So a first year bird will be all the birds that hatch this summer through the end of the year. Once the calendar hits, this is like Bander stuff. Once the calendar hits January 1st, December 31st to January 1st, every bird turns one essentially, and that becomes like a second year bird. Correct me if I'm wrong on this one, Greg, because I know hatch year versus first year versus second year is something that I sometimes get confused on. How I was using first year here, I was referring to hatch year bird.
Yeah, I think I tend to think I think hatch year is a specific term. Hatch year is what you just described. That's the up to December 31st.
Right.
First year, it's in the first year of its life. So that would be from
before its first adult molt.
Before its first adult
pre-basic molt. Sorry.
Pre-basic if we're going to go there. Exactly.
Ooh, let's go in the weeds now.
And that's where warblers especially, and we'll get to this a little bit later. Warblers, they have a juvenile plumage which looks like nothing.
Juvenile is a specific plumage that is that first set of adult feathers that the birds have, and a lot of times they lose those in the first the fall molt. Not the wings. The flight feathers they keep for an extra like 3 or 4 months.
Right.
So their flight feathers get super worn.
And the tail feathers.
And tail feathers, all their flight feathers. They get super worn, but their body will look fresh. Those first 2 years of a bird's life can be crazy when it comes to
the contour feathers in warblers in particular. Most warblers, I think, almost all, they lose those quickly on the breeding grounds, and then you see what's illustrated in most field guides as a fall warbler, which is actually their second. Out of the nest plumage, and then they
change feathers pretty quickly. These
and then they will go to a third.
These juvenile feathers that they get are frequently like meant for them to beat up on. They're very streaky. They're very different. A lot of times they aren't even illustrated in field guides. So people will sometimes, like chipping sparrow is a common one around where I live in like my neighborhood, very common neighborhood bird in the East. Actually across the continent, but like that first juvenile plumage is super streaky, super different, and then they molt into what looks more or less like their adult, quote unquote, adult plumage, but not their flight feathers. Their flight feathers they retain for the next year, and then you get some birds have like a first summer plumage, as Andrew Haffenden points out in YouTube. It can be very, very confusing. I tend to just lump them all into like subadult or immature, which is a big catch-all of all those kind of non-adult plumages. I find that to be the easiest way to do it. But let's talk about this hawk, Greg.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the hawk. Just one other point. Yellow-rumped warbler is one of those birds that, especially in the East, holds on to its not commonly, but commonly enough, holds on to that true juvenile plumage all the way until early spring. And so you'll get birds in late April or mid-April in places like Florida and North Carolina that are still in juvenile plumage and really throw people for a loop.
They look like they have gone through like 5 dryer cycles. Like they just look absolutely disgusting, and they should be embarrassed themselves, frankly.
All right, let's do this.
At that point, those feathers are not looking good.
From Atlanta, Georgia, and this was in an urban setting. So, first thing about habitat here, urban setting, sort of in the trees. That immediately steers me to two or three birds, 2 or 3 hawks, and steers me away from one of the most common, which is red-tailed. And a couple of other things about why this isn't a red-tailed hawk. We can see sort of that darkish throat. the overall dark mottled, eyes call it woodland hawk sort of look. It doesn't have the white V on the scapulars, but also it's just got that kind of stocky, small shape. Red-tailed hawk is a big, beefy bird. So
big, shouldery, big, thick feet.
Yeah.
The feet on this guy look awfully skinny. The legs here. Red-tailed is this is a substantial hawk, and they tend to like, as you say, Greg, a bit more open.
Exactly. They're not a bird you find and you're swooping through your backyard.
Very infrequently.
Yeah. Unless you live on a ranch or something. But there are 3 species that do frequently swoop through urban backyards. And as I mentioned, I had one just the other day. And that's Cooper's broadwing and red-shouldered. And the person who posted this asked if it was a Cooper's. And so I put together, as I tend to do, a little comparison. So let's jump into that.
Yeah, Cooper's immediately stands out to me, or as not this bird, because as you can see in the Cooper's in this comparison here, again, we're talking wing to tail ratio, right? We're talking Buteo hawks, which tend to have shorter tails and longer wings. Cooper's hawk is an accipiter, at least for now, and which means that it has short wings and a very long tail, and that stands out in these birds quite a bit. And also kind of just the overall bulkiness. I mean, although Cooper's is a very bulky hawk, they do tend to be kind of slender compared to our woodland backyard Buteos like red-shouldered and broad-winged. They're kind of bowling pin shaped.
And they have small head.
They have very small head compared to their body. Yeah.
So the other 2 are broad-winged and red-shouldered, and the bird in question is the one in the middle, which, if you've looked down there at the bottom, is a red-shouldered hawk. And the primary reason it is a red-shouldered hawk is because of the banding on the secondaries that I've pointed out with a blue arrow there that you can see. And so red-shouldered and broadwing can be very confusing in young plumage like this, but broadwing has pretty much an overall dark wing panel. It's just a really dark bird from the back, whereas red-shouldered is more patterned. Red-shouldered in adult has a beautiful checkered wings, and
that's a nice looking hawk.
Actually, and the juveniles tend to show a hint of that pattern as they age. So
a lot of young red-shoulders around right now.
This and that's especially in places like Atlanta,
broadwing tends to have a bit longer wings too. You can sort of see that in this bird as well. It's broad-winged. It's a good name.
And it's a long-distance migrant, which red-shouldered is not.
You can see that. It's right. And also, I generally find that most red-shoulders tend to have dark chins as opposed to broadwings, which tend to have light-colored chins. It's not hard and fast, but it's one of those things that can be helpful. But as you say, Greg, looking at those primaries, if you get a perched bird, you see a lot of pattern on it, and it's almost always red-shouldered. And also, I've never seen a red-shouldered this time of year that isn't screaming its head off, so you can probably identify it by voice as well. I have a question from Chris Ortega in the chat here. Has there been any talk of taxonomic reclassification of accipiters like Cooper's? He caught my joke there. It's been kind of one of those things that people have been talking about for a while. Turns out that the large accipiters and the small accipiters are not all that closely related, and probably, as with all this taxonomic stuff, it's like, where do you draw the line between species, between genera, between families, etc. And if you're want to be consistent, then maybe the big accipiters and the small accipiters should not be in the same genus. But we'll see if that ever happens. That's gonna be quite a change, because I'm so used to calling Sharpie and Cooper and Goss, for that matter, accipiters, and they may not be at some point, and then in not too distant future.
I'll tell you what, they're going to be accipiters for me to the end of my days, because that is etched in my brain, and I don't know that that's ever going to be able to be unetched.
We're going to start calling them goshawks and sparrowhawks. The big one's goshawks and the little one's sparrowhawks.
Yeah.
Sparrowhawk. It's not bad.
I still like chicken hawk for Coopers.
Big blue darter.
Giving away my age there a little bit.
Cooper would be would be on the big side.
Yeah, it would.
It's a goshawk, not a sparrowhawk.
Speaking of hawks, let's continue. So we get
I don't know, man.
we get photos like this where people find
I
feathers.
usually ignore them.
And they want to know what they are, and if they're body feathers. I find it fascinating, because if the feather has any kind of pattern on it at all, or is any, if it's just a little olivey feather like the back feather from a Tennessee warbler, yeah, you're not going to be able to identify that. But or a flight feather from a warbler or something like that, you're not going to be able to identify that. But with some sleuthing, you actually can identify feathers that you find on the ground. Now, one thing about feathers is it is not legal to keep them, so we'll just get that out of the way. But pick them up, take a picture of it, drop it, get on your way. Don't take them home. So get that out of the way. What we see here is a primary feather, so we'll get straight to that. Those long feathers with the sturdy quill, and the sort of lopsided appearance with the outer vein being much smaller than the inner, that's all primary feather. If it was a tail feather, it would be much more even.
About the same on both sides. Yep.
Pretty much.
That's about as far as I go with feathers. What is it? And also, you can tell that this is on the this is a left side. This is a bird. This is a feather from the left side of the bird.
Yes, because we're looking at the underside of it.
Are we? Is this the underside?
I believe so. Yeah.
Then it's the right side.
Then it's the right. It's the right side. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. That looks to me like the underside. The way the quill is
right,
going up the bottom there, and the person very handily included a lighter as a guide to scale. So what I did is I zoomed in the picture, and I found the model of lighter, and then figured out exactly how big it is, so we can figure out. This is a Bic model. This is a Bic model J6 lighter that is 8 centimeters tall.
Did you use iNat to find that out?
And I did not. If iNat starts, we need an iNat for junk found on the beach.
iNat for junk. iJunk.
iJunk. I'm loving it.
iTrash. Yeah.
iTrash.
Better one.
So this looks to me, because of the shape of the feather, this looks to me like a hawk. Or a bird, a soaring bird, because when hawks fly and you see this soar, and you see the fingers at the end of the what they call the fingers at the end of the wing there, the primaries. What causes that is the shape of the feather itself, and you'll see how the outer vein is so much smaller than the inner. When you put those together, it creates that. When you put those feathers together, that's what creates that fingered look, when the wing is spread. So this is a hawk, and then going through the hawks, you will find.
Live? Thanks, Chris.
What's that? What's this lighter live? Yeah.
What's this junk live?
Yeah. Okay, we can narrow it down to a Cooper's or a sharp-shinned hawk. So one of the reasons that I picked this one is to show you the Federal Feather Database, which you can access. Just Google Feather Database, and you will find screen after screen like this. Super great resource. It's a great resource. And so taking that lighter, which we know is 8 centimeters, and putting it on the scale, we can actually identify this feather. I would say that this is P5 of a Cooper's hawk. And the reason Now there's some variation in between male and female Coopers and Sharpie, but looking at them, there was a whole bunch of them. Looking at them, it's this feather's fairly large, so I'm gonna guess this is probably a female Cooper's hawk, a young
That's
female
a good one,
Cooper's
Green Sunrise.
hawk.
I appreciate that.
What's that?
Is it? It's a butano.
Oh boy,
Not an accipiter. Yeah.
we're doing
That's
good
a
here.
joke. That's a good one.
Oh, you know what? Chris pointed out those are backwards. Boy, yes, look at my dyslexic brain at work here. Yes, 1 is the outermost on the left. 10 is the inner, or 10 is the, I just did it again. 10 is the outermost on the left. 1 is the innermost on the right. You are witnessing my dyslexia in action here. But in either case, 5 is in the middle. And this is P5 of a Cooper's hawk, and you'll notice how the big part of the feather sort of goes up to the 4th bar, and the outer part that's smaller just kind of barely comes up to that, and we see how tall the lighter is in comparison, and P5 on a Cooper's hawk matches up really nicely with that. You're just kind of sitting there looking there like a deer in the headlights there, pal.
I appreciate the fact that on this comp that you put the lighter.
Well, come on. If we're gonna go,
if we're gonna working on for the last,
if we're gonna go all
hours.
CSI Miami, let's do it, right? Let's do it if we're gonna go there.
Yeah.
But yes, just so it's not confusing, I did get the numbers backwards, as I am prone to do with numbers. And the 10 should be the leftmost, outermost primary, and 1 should be the innermost, which is approaching a secondary appearance, and actually looks kind of like, it's that's where it kind of gets difficult to tell. Is it an outer tail feather, or is it an outer primary, or an inner primary, or outer secondary?
All right, Bic lighter, yes. Everybody, it's a Bic lighter.
It's a Bic lighter. Check out the feather database. Just Google.
Feather database is really
just Google feather database, and you'll pull it right up.
Really fun resource.
It is a great resource.
And you can keep some feathers. You can keep turkey feathers and duck feathers and waterfowl and stuff like that, because they're
pretty much anything that's hunted.
Woodcock.
Woodcock is one.
Yeah. Woodcock feather.
Rails.
Yeah.
Some places sandhill crane. Yeah. Ontario. So, what do you see in here, Nate?
I'm seeing a small passerine bird, Greg. It's
good
looking
for
awfully,
you, Nate.
Awfully rough. The bill looks awfully thick and triangular. It's sitting on the ground. It's got a long tail. This is a New World Sparrow in Ontario, Canada. It's got a plainish breast, maybe a little bit of streaking there. It's got an eye line. It's got a cap. It's got I love the color on the wings, on the flight feathers on the wings. That's
it's got
nice.
Some rich brown rufus,
very rich
color.
Brown feathers. Long tail suggests the Melospiza genus, and I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, one of the two things that stood out here, well, one, it's got yellow at the base of the bill, but it's also a very young bird, and it still has the yellow gape. So that kind of dilutes the importance of that particular field mark. But then it's also got this sort of buffy flank that contrasts with the whitish belly.
Greg, possibly a human, noticed that there's no lighter next to this sparrow. So how do we know it's not 50 stories tall? We don't know.
You have stumped the band.
We don't know. We have no idea. There's no context.
You have stumped the band. We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't even know if this bird has feet. So,
it's true.
It's
No lighter. Unless you
So
compare it with a piece of garbage, Greg, there's no way we can identify this bird.
right. So in Ontario at this time of the year, there's a few species that this could be, and the person who posted this asked if it was a song sparrow or a swamp sparrow. And there's another species.
Lincoln sparrow is the third Melospiza.
Lincoln sparrow, and then there is a zonotrichia, that actually should be considered, and that's white-throated sparrow.
White-crowned? White-throated?
No, not white-crowned. Not looking like this. White-throated. I think white-throated and swamp is one of those.
Those can be difficult.
It's one of those ID conundrums that people aren't expecting. And
if the color is not like perfect on the photo, they can sometimes if you have it on auto, if you have your camera on auto settings, it can manipulate the colors in a photo such that it can be
remember that, because actually I think we're going to be getting to that as well a little bit here later on. So those are really the three species that we're dealing with here, and so let's take a look and compare and see what we got. I use banding codes here just to keep it from getting a little too cluttery. The bird in question in the middle, we've got a swamp sparrow on the left, we've got a white-throated sparrow above it, and then a song sparrow on the right. We can get rid of the song sparrow pretty quickly.
Too streaky.
It's very streaky. It's got that thick black malar, and it's got a heavier bill, and all of that put together really just kind of tosses that bird out. So now really we're between swamp and white-throated, and as you can see here, this bird is a young swamp sparrow, and we've got that nice buffy flank, which, depending on where it's at in its molt, white-throated sparrow can show. And then you have to rely on other things. But at this age where it's still showing some yellow in the gape, it wouldn't be like that. It would be a little bit streakier and blockier. But also there's gestalt. White-throated sparrow is a completely different genus. It's a bigger...
big-headed, round-headed, deep-bellied zono. The tail is quite long on those birds, but yeah, and you know the coloring on the flight feathers that you can see also rules out white-throated sparrow as well.
Well, but that's
they
can have more rufous than you might think. It's just that's why it gets to be really tough. But the bill size, swamp sparrow has a narrower, longer bill, and it has yellow at the base of the bill all throughout its life, which white-throated sparrow does not. It only has it when it's really young, like these two birds here in the picture. The rufous in the wing, it's like you put these Len Kopka says the rufous in the wing clinches it for me. Alex DiMeglio says it's not streaked enough to be a Lincoln's. That is true. A Lincoln's would be more akin to a song in terms of general plumage. And it would show that unique buffy gray olive graphite look that a Lincoln's has. Even at this age, it would show it a little bit.
Swamp sparrow for me, certainly. Another thing to point out, too, is what we talked a little bit earlier about how those juvenile plumages, those early plumages, are really fragile and meant to sort of get beat up before they get replaced by their first set of adult feathers. And you can certainly see this bird in juvenile plumage. Those feathers look messy. They don't look nice. They look, fragile. And that's sort of the point. They're going to be super streaky. They're going to be kind of weird to kind of mess with the bird's outline as it's moving through plumage, protect it a little bit better. It's intended, while this bird is in a very vulnerable state, to make the bird kind of harder to see. And those feathers get beat up really easily, and this bird is looking awfully rough. But kind of classic juvenile plumage, juvenile, whatever you want to say it. But it's a bird that recently hatched.
Hatchier.
Yeah.
Bring it back. Yeah. Yeah, so the bird in question here is a swamp sparrow. Carl Bendorf says, "Hi guys." Um, and yeah, Len, that's what we pointed out at the beginning there. Len Kopka points out the buffy flanks, and yeah, we use the word gestalt a lot in this program because it's so important. It's probably
tool.
It is one of the most important things to learn in identifying birds. Is gestalt, a thing that is greater than the sum of its parts, and the combination of the buffy flanks, the rufous wing panel, the overall kind of plain look, the thin bill, all of that gives a very different impression from white-throated or song or anything else that it would be confused with.
Yep.
So on we go. We are now at Prince Edward Island, Canada. Yeah, what about that, huh?
Canada's smallest province. What?
Well, apparently
We've got
they have blackbirds.
They have blackbirds with silver bills. It's
silver
like
bills.
Yeah, it's an African species.
I used to keep silver bills when I was a kid.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Small perching bird, conical bill, short conical bill. This is another sparrow. All over dark. So dark. It makes me think that something is going on with this photo, Greg.
I think you're right, Nate. Yeah, so this is a junco. And being in Prince Edward Island, Canada in the summer, it is a dark-eyed junco. And the person who posted the photo was like, "What's going on with this junco? Because is it melanistic?" I mean, and you look at that picture, it's like, wow, that is ashy. A wild-looking junco. And our very good friend and co-worker, Marky Muchler, pointed out that what's really going on here is that the picture is just underexposed.
That's a lot.
And
better,
what's that?
That's a lot better.
That's
a lot
better.
Little overexposed, but
that might be a little overexposed.
Yeah.
But yeah,
but
it's
still,
just an underexposed picture. And
it's our only short tail. Well, I mean, we do have some dark sparrows that are all over. The juncos for sure, the towhees. But the tail's not long enough for towhee here. It's got that cute little flush expression that we associate with juncos, and
absolutely,
yeah, it goes to show that a single photo can be misleading, and sometimes photo artifacts do kind of change the way that you think about certain birds. I mean, I've certainly been fooled by photos that. One of the longest threads we ever had in What's This Bird was a yellow-rumped warbler that everyone was convinced was a Kirtland's warbler because the way it was sitting, single photo, the way it was sitting, the lighting was weird. I even came in on Kirtland's warbler and I was wrong. So it happens.
And we had that one was so confusing because of the way that the camera. Well, there was a lot going on in that photo, but it actually was a featured article in Birding Magazine
really?
as well,
yeah,
a featured photo. And but yeah, I mean, the camera, be aware of exposure and how a camera, especially faced up at the sky, it's trying the camera's trying to adjust the exposure for everything, and you're pointing it up at the sky, possibly in the late afternoon, and in order to not blow out the sky, the camera brain is going to try to balance all of that, and you have to open up the exposure in order to see what's inside these underexposed images like this. And it'll do the same. Your camera can do the same thing in the other direction and overexpose things and blow out field marks. I can't tell you how many times we've had pictures of birds. It's like, well, it should be streaked there. Well, it is. It's just that the camera has blown out the exposure so much that you can't see it. And if we mess with it, you can start to see it a bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is the main reason I put this one up is pay attention to your camera, your exposure. When you get a picture that looks weird, don't assume that the bird is weird.
A lot of times the camera will default towards lower exposure because it's easier to lighten up something than it is to darken something. In post production. So the camera is trying to make your job easier for you, but it can in fact mess you up.
Yeah. And our last bird comes from Minnesota.
One more warbler.
Yeah. And
thin little bill.
Thin little bill.
Lanky body, long tail, skinny little legs. Definitely a warbler for me. Not many other birds look like this in North America.
And
the straight bill, it's not hooked like a vireo. It's not broad at the base like a sparrow or a finch. Definitely a warbler.
Yeah, and as we always say here with warblers, pay attention to the tail. The tail will very often be a very strong clue as to what you're looking at. And when we look at this bird's tail, we see that the feathers are kind of split in half with broad black tips and pale the lower
side half.
Yeah. His pale. I was trying to come up with a word for that. Anyways.
Opposite distal.
Yeah. And really, when you drill down, there's only 2 species of warbler in the ABA area that have this tail pattern.
And unfortunately, they are both kind of long and lanky with a long tail. They're both shaped rather similarly, interestingly enough.
Although I would say one of them a little bit more so than the other. But those 2 are American redstart and magnolia warbler. And so here they are compared. And, the first thing that we can see here is that the American redstart on the left, which is what our mystery bird is, it's fanning its tail, and I can imagine this bird shifting its tail back and forth,
always,
left and right, which
constantly.
is something they do constantly.
Yep.
And, looking up in a tree full of warblers, when you see a warbler doing that with its tail, shifting back and forth, left and right, it's like, redstart, 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 redstart. You can just get rid of them and start looking for the other things in there.
They're very light when they're on their feet,
and flamboyant
warblers.
With their tail.
Yeah, they drop from higher branch to lower branch at exactly the speed and as like a falling fall leaf, and it drives me absolutely nuts to constantly be watching fall leaves. September, October, where I live. And thinking, well, warbler, redstart, and it's never a redstart. It's a falling fall leaf, but they do it exactly like it. It's crazy.
Yeah, and so other things we see here is that the pattern on the tail in a redstart in first year is yellow, whereas magnolia it's black and white. But it can be hard to see that, especially in young birds. You just see dark and light. You can't really tell if it's black and white.
And whatnot. Yeah.
Magnolia warbler has white wing bars, which the redstart does not have.
Does not.
And it's almost always much yellower underneath. A redstart will show yellow at the shoulder, but not this yellow underparts with a white undertail covert, lower belly. And then as they get older, the Maggies will start to get streaks as they approach adult plumage.
Yep. Even the females usually show a little bit of the streaks that makes them rather distinctive. I also always associate
Amy Bollinger.
This is just
Amy Bollinger.
I always associate Maggies with like willows and whatnot.
Well, yes, and in the fall, boy, you can find warblers almost anywhere. Something to get ready for that we talk about a lot is woodland edges in the fall where the goldenrods and other forbs, but especially the goldenrods and the Joe Pye weed and stuff.
Yeah.
And the insects will especially on cold mornings will be down in those plants, and all the warblers come on down and feed at eye level, especially if you find yourself a patch of that gets hit by the first morning sun. Man, that's gold.
It's good stuff.
That's gold.
That's goldenrod.
Amy Bollinger says, love birds. Now, lovebirds are parrots that have heavier bills.
She just saying she loves birds.
I know that. I'm kidding. Hi, Amy.
I wasn't sure.
It's been a couple of weeks. We're a little punchy.
Yeah. 3 weeks since the last time.
So yes, we've got American redstart here on the left and Magnolia warbler on the right. Very similar tail patterns, but the rest of the bird is different, and even the shape of the two is different. If you can get a good look at them.
The American redstart almost always fans its tail a lot more than Magnolia warbler. Magnolia warbler is kind of I don't know, lanky, thinner build. American redstart has a thicker bill, generally lighter on its feet. I don't know. We've talked about the differences at some length here, but yeah, that's just sort of my impression of these birds when you see them in the fall.
Thank you, Daphne and Rose, for answering, or Susan. Oh yeah, for answering Susan's question about Birdcast there on the Facebook chat. So I think that's pretty much all we've got for birds here today, and we're coming in right on time.
Right on time.
Yeah, boy, it's almost like we planned this one out.
Got this thing down to a science these days, Greg.
Yeah, except for numbering primaries.
That's how you know it's real and live.
Yeah, exactly. And couple of things before we head out. And again, if you guys have anything to say, any questions, we've got a few more minutes here. But if you like what we do, aba.org/join and become a member, become a stakeholder in the organization. And if you love the ABA podcast, which I think is the best natural history podcast there is out there, you love this show, you want our magazines, you like our web content, help support it all. And of course, you can also check into our member directory and social media experience, ABA community. A lot of good stuff happening there. And don't forget about our upcoming community weekend in Boston. And oh, sorry, I got distracted here by a comment from Amy Bollinger. Saw my first magpie in Colorado. Told a kid at the Pizza Hut he thought I was crazy. They are like pigeons out there. Yeah, they are. But they're wonderful pigeons.
Yeah, they're better than pigeons. A little bit better than pigeons.
Oh, magpies are fantastic.
Magpies are a great bird. We will be back in a couple weeks. If you would like to keep up on when we are going to be doing this program, make sure you sign up for our newsletter, Flight Calls. You can do that at the ABA website. Just scroll on down to the bottom and get your email on there. We're not going to sell your emails. We're not going to do anything like that, but you will get a little notification when we let you know that we're going to be coming on these things. We're trying to do it every 2 weeks. Sometimes stuff comes up like moving for me. But we are going to we're going to try and hold up to an every 2 week schedule. So we will see you a couple times. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, follow us on YouTube, hit that like button. That's another way to get notified when we do this. Otherwise, Greg, I don't know what else we got going on here. We'll be back in a couple weeks to talk birds and birding with y'all.
Yeah,
and make sure to show us some more garbage next time, Greg.
I'll do my best. All right, take it easy.